Okay, so this video is on how to make bubble art photography. This is not something new. I've seen other people do bubble art photography, so it's not something I've invented or come up with myself. I have changed a few things on the way I do this, and I'd like to explain to you on how I do this bubble art photography. So let's get started. Right, a few things you will need. You'll need some kind of a glass dish or bowl, or you can use something like a cup or glass, or needs to be round, otherwise you won't get bubbles. You can't really make bubbles with something that's square. And preferably, if you have something, you need to get something that doesn't have name or writing across the bottom like some glass things do, and it'll say Pyrex on it, or it'll say something different on the bottom of it. And if you can get something that doesn't have these lines in the bottom of it, is even better, although it's very hard to find something that doesn't have lines in the bottom of it like this. Doesn't really make a whole big deal, but if I could find something that doesn't have these lines on the bottom, I'd be really happy too. Okay, so you will also need some type of a light source. In order to get the colors into bubbles, you need some type of a light source where the light can shine up through the bottom of your glass dish and illuminate the bubbles that you're going to blow in the glass dish. Now you can use any type of light you have, preferably white light. I have tried this with lots of different colored lights and all kinds of different lights, and you would think that you would need colored lights to get the colors in the bubbles, but you don't. All you need is white light. The colors in the bubbles do come from the white light, and they also come from what your bubbles are made out of. It's just like when you're walking down the street and you see a puddle, and then in that puddle you see some oil that's dripped from a car, and you see all the colors in the oil. Not quite the same thing, but depending on what you use as your source for the bubbles will depend on the colors that you get in the bubbles themselves. You can use these type of lights here, which are just LED lights. Oh, this one doesn't have any power in it. Oh, yes, it does. Okay, so just a regular LED light will do. This one here has lots of different colors on it. You can also use this type of a light here. This is my preferred light that I like to use. It does have colors, and it has a remote control where you can put different colors in there and change the colors, and you can make it flash colors, and you can make it change colors, and all kinds of different things. I really don't use this. I keep it on just regular white light. The reason I like to use this is because with the bowl that I'm using and the setup that I'm using, for me, this works great. But like I said, you can use just about any type of light. I've used flashlights, I've used regular incandescent bulbs, I've used just any kind of light. So it's not about the things that you have that makes the different colors and makes the bubbles any different. It's basically about the setup that you use in order to get the colors. Okay, so also you will need to have whatever light you're using will need to come up from the bottom, and preferably not out the sides. And also the room that you're doing this in will need to be dark, because when you blow the bubbles in here, if there's any kind of light source in the room or from a window or anywhere else, it's just like a mirror. You will see the reflection in the bubbles. When I first started doing this, I was blowing bubbles, and I must have taken 200 or 300 photos. And then when later on, I thought, oh, these are going to be really great photos. I looked at them on the computer, and in the bubble was a picture of me and my camera. because I had light source behind me, and the reflection of me was just reflecting in the bubbles. So really, you need your area to be completely dark. This does present somewhat of a problem because in order to get good results, you will need a camera that can operate really good in low light situations. Now, I've used all my cameras are all Nikon cameras. Now, I've used a D3200, I've used a Z5. Right now, the camera that I generally use now, and the one that I'm going to use today, is Nikon Z6 II. The lens I'm using is 100mm T Artisan f2.8 macro lens. Now, you will need a macro lens. In order to zero in on the bubbles and get a really nice close-up shot, you will need a macro lens. A lot of lenses on the lens will say it's a macro lens, but unless it's one-to-one macro, it's not really a macro lens. So if you can get a one-to-one macro lens, it'll be great. Now, you will need to have your aperture open as high as far as you can, because you're going to need to let a lot of light into the camera. It's no good closing down your aperture and trying to get these type of photos, because like I said, in low light, you're going to need a aperture of, right now I have my aperture set at 2.8. I have taken photos in lots of different apertures, so that really depends on what you set your camera to and what your results are. For me, wide open gives the best results and is really good. I shoot in manual. I've tried to do it in autofocus, but it just doesn't work out. I've tried shooting with a tripod, and that doesn't work out either. So what I like to do is, after I've blown the bubbles, and I'll show you that in a minute, after I've blown the bubbles, in order to get a good focus, I set my camera on the settings that I want it on. I always keep my ISO really low, which is difficult too because you're in a low light situation. Your ISO is going to want to go up if you have it on auto ISO. This really is not a super big problem, because now today, with all the programs you can get on Lightroom and Photoshop, and you can denoise your photos later if you shoot in RAW. Some of my photos were shot with a high ISO, and I've had to denoise the photos. Not a big problem. If you can manage in a low ISO, it works out better, because then later on you don't have to sit there and try and denoise all your photos that you're taking. And like I said, it depends on your lens, and it depends on all the factors involved, how much light you have. You can also use a regular lens, and you can get filters for the front of your lens that magnify the lens, that make it 10 times magnification, 5 times magnification, or any type of magnification. So even without a macro lens, you can do this type of photography. Okay, so let me show you what kind of setup I use. Right, I work in a factory, and I have access to pieces of metal and other objects. So in order to direct my light through the bottom of my bowl, I've made this out of a piece of metal. It's just a piece of metal that's rolled into a round thing. And on the inside, I put alley foil. And on the outside, I just take a piece of black paper around the outside so the light doesn't reflect off of the metal. The bowl sits on top. Doesn't sit all the way down in there. really, I'm going to go ahead and make another one so that my bowl sits deeper inside. But right now, this is not that big of a problem. It seems to work very well. I've also made a small cutout in the side so that when I put my light underneath, because my light has a stem on the light, this fits over the stem and it can sit flat on the table. Otherwise, my bowl would sit at an angle on the table and this wouldn't be any good. So I made this little cutout. Now, even though my light has lots of different settings on it, and I can turn the light down and turn the light up, it doesn't really seem to get low enough to make really good photos. Sometimes it's too bright. And also, on the inside of the light, you can see the LED. This will show up in your photos on your bubbles. Whatever's in the light, your filament or your LEDs, has a potential of showing up in the bubble art. Okay, so what I've done, I've just taken a piece of regular paper towel and I put this over the light, like so. And also, I've taken a piece of cloth and I put this over there too. And that just basically diffuses the light so that it's not all in one place and it just spreads out more. And it seems to produce a much better light. Now, like I said, you can use any type of light. You can use any type of material over top. You can experiment. I'm still experimenting myself. I use all kinds of different things and I get all kinds of different results, as you will see in my photos. And then what I do is I place this over top, like so, and we're ready to go. So then, let me take these out of the way. What I do now is I set this down, and I have a piece of paper towel here so that it doesn't get all over my furniture. And I have my bowl, and I've already prepared my bubble mix so that I can blow bubbles. And that just fits on top, like that. Okay, let's talk about the bubble mix. You can use loads of different things for the bubbles. I find that just about any soapy kind of stuff will make really good bubbles. How long your bubbles last for is kind of really important. If you blow bubbles and you only have a few seconds to take the photos, then it's really difficult to get good photos and get a lot of photos. So over the years, I've tried just about everything. I've tried this kids' bubble soap stuff that you can use and make bubbles with for your children. I tried dish soap, which works really well. And also, I tried Lake's body wash. Today, I'm using a combination of all three together in the bowl. So I haven't measured anything. I don't know, 2 tablespoons of this, 1 tablespoon of that. I just pour some in the bowl and mix it all together and add water, of course. And so far, my bubbles last for a long time, which is really, really good. The longer you can make your bubbles last, the better, because then you have lots of time to be able to take pictures of the bubbles and they don't burst within a few seconds of you blowing a bubble. If you just use dish soap and water, you only have a minute max really to take pictures of the bubbles. You want to try and get your bubbles to last for a long time. I've heard people tell me to put sugar in the water with the bubble mix, and I've heard people tell me to put molasses in there. I've heard all kinds of ways where you could make bubbles last for longer after you've blown the bubble. I tried the sugar thing. For me, it just didn't work, so I just don't use the sugar thing. Experiment. I'm still experimenting, and I'm sure I'll find lots of other things that I can use to to blow bubbles, and every time I'm in the local shopping center and in the store and I see something that's soap, even hand soap, I've taken hand soap before and tried that. Different things produce different patterns of light and different colors on the bubbles. I've used food coloring in the bubble mix. I've used just about anything I could find that will add color, or I put drops of wine, red wine, in the bubble mix. Didn't really work too well, but hey, I tried. I've used orange juice. I've used all kinds of things. Anything that I have in my refrigerator that I can stick in there. I spent weeks and weeks and weeks experimenting with all kinds of different things to try and get different bubbles. Today, like I said, I'm using a combination of the kids soap bubble mix, and I'm using dish soap, and I'm using the Lynx body wash and water. That's all I have in my container, and so far it seems to be working pretty well. Okay, so here we go. First thing that I will do is turn on the light. And as you can see, it lights up the bowl. Now, as far as the background, you can use just about any kind of background, any color you want. I prefer to use a black background. You can use black card like this. You can use black paper. You can use any color you want, really. If you use really bright colors, they tend to reflect the light, and it's not really great for the photos. So a darker color seems to work better. Most of my photos have all been taken with this one piece of black card, which seems to work really well. So you don't want your black card to be too close to the photo, because as you can probably see, you can see the reflection of the light in the black card. If you move your black card back, you still get the black background, but you don't get the reflection of the background. Okay, so because you are in manual focus and you don't want to have to keep focusing, what you need to do is experiment with your camera. Set your camera on the settings that you need, you feel like it's going to work, and you can always change them later. It doesn't matter. Get your camera set up, and instead of focusing with your focus ring, once you've blown the bubbles, get ready to take your photos, and then just move the camera back and forth, closer and further away from the bubble, in order to get a good photo that you like, and look in your viewfinder and see what kind of image you're going to get. When you blow the bubbles, a bubble has two sides to it. You have the front side of the bubble, and you have the back side of the bubble, because the bubble's round. When you're focusing, if you focus on the back side of the bubble, you'll get one type of image. Usually, if you focus on the back side of the bubble, the image you get will be kind of like what's coming out of the bottom of your bowl. So in my case, because the bottom of my bowl has these rings, you can see that in some of my images. My images will have like a ring in the bottom with different colors and all that, which actually looks kind of nice, really. That's why I said you don't really want a bowl that has Pyrex written on it, because that will show up in your pictures. You don't want any kind of writing or any kind of logo on the bottom of your bowl. This bowl here is clean. There's nothing on the bottom of it, even though it has this ring around the bottom. Also, make sure your bowl is clean. If you have any kind of scratches or marks on your bowl, they will show up in your photos too. Okay? The photos that you take, if you come in real close, you'll get the back side of the bubble. If you focus on a little bit further back, you will get the front side of the bubble. The front side of the bubble to me, is really the most interesting photos, because you get, just like you would, like I said, if you see oil in water, you'll get the rainbow effects coming down the front of the bubble, and they will change. One minute there'll be rainbow effects, the next minute they could be all kinds of different weird, really fascinating effects coming down the front side of the bubble. So after you've got your setup, the next thing you need to do, and I'm not going to do this in this video because if I turn the lights off, you won't be able to see me at all. So next thing you need to do is turn all your lights off and darken the room. Once your room is dark, then all you have to do is blow some bubbles. Now, in order to blow bubbles, I just have one of these metal straws. You can use plastic straws, paper straws, any kind of straw that you like to use. So what I do, now, some of my photos you will see have just one big bubble. Some of my photos you see will have one big bubble and lots of smaller bubbles. I tend to prefer to have one big bubble. I like the effect of the photos that come out with one big bubble. But also, some of my photos with one big bubble and smaller bubbles around it seem to be pretty good. It actually looks like planets. If you get too many bubbles, it just really doesn't create a really great effect. So, but it's your preference, whatever kind of bubbles you want, or how many bubbles you want, or if you keep blowing too many bubbles, because the formula that I'm using, the bubbles don't pop really easy. Let's say you want to start out with 4 or 5 bubbles and you blow and you get lots of bubbles. And then after that, you decide, okay, well, now I just want to have 1 bubble. It's really kind of difficult to get all the bubbles to pop so you can go back and blow just 1 bubble. So what I like to do is I like to start out with my photography with 1 bubble. Then later on in the photo shoot, if I decide that I'd like to see more bubbles, then I go ahead and blow the photos with lots of other bubbles. That way I don't have to worry about sitting and waiting for all the bubbles to pop and go away and get out of my way and not show up in my photos that I want only 1 bubble. Okay, so here we go. There. I don't know if you can see that, but as you can see, I have 1 big bubble and a couple of smaller bubbles in the picture. And I don't know if the camera's picking this up, but you can see some of the colors in the bubble. Now, you really don't see the effects of all the colors until you're looking through your camera lens. You can see some bubbles in there, and well, see, that just popped right away. I probably didn't have enough time to even grab my camera, get ready to take the photo. Not sure what's happening because just a little while ago I was blowing bubbles and they were staying there for a long time. So I think I just need to mix up a little bit and get it remixed up. So after you've blown the bubbles and you've got your bubble there, now one thing too you have to be careful with is because you're using a macro lens, a lot of times you have to get really super close to the bubbles in order to take the photos. That's why I'm using 100 millimeter, and I would suggest you use 100 millimeters or more, because that way you don't have to get quite as close to the bubbles. Because if your bubbles are popping, what's going to happen? You're going to get bubble stuff all over the front of your lens, and that's not good. You don't want to have your lens coated with bubbles and stuff like that on your lens, because then you'll be constantly having to clean your lens, go back, take some more photos, clean your lens. My working distance to the bubbles isn't very far at all, even with a 100 millimeter lens. Most of the time, I'm pretty much this close to the bubbles. When you start taking photos of these bubbles, you will notice right before the bubble gets ready to pop, you'll get this haze of kind of blackish color coming down the front of the bubble. To me, whenever I start seeing this, I know that that bubble's getting ready to pop. After you've done this for a while, you'll get to know just about when the bubble's going to pop. Not always. I mean, I get bubbles pop within a few seconds of me focusing on them, and sometimes I know when the bubble's going to pop and I can move my camera back. With a 100mm lens, or sometimes I've got other telephoto macro lenses that go up to 300mm, which gives me a little bit more space to get further back with my lens to the bubbles. If you have, let's say, a 50mm lens or a 35mm lens, you're going to be almost practically touching these bubbles, which is not good. You don't want to be that close to a bubble. I've done it. My lens has got soap bubbles all over my lens, and it took me a while to clean the soap off and get my lens nice and clean again. So be careful. You don't want to ruin your lenses. Oop, just dropped my cap. Okay, so now I'm just going to show you some of the photos I've taken using this setup. And I hope you like the photos, and I hope this video helps you guys out in order to take some really great photos. And if you do, post them and send me a link. I'll really be interested in seeing what kind of photos you've come up with, and what kind of light you're using, and what kind of soap you're using. And I'm always learning, so if there's anything that you can come up with that works great, let me know. I might use your idea. You're welcome to use any idea that I have on this video, and you're welcome to contact me and leave a comment and let me know if there's any questions you would like about making these bubble art photography. This is my first video I've ever made, so bear with me on this, because I wasn't great at making videos. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and you'll learn something from this video, and good bubble blowing. All right, take care. Thank you.